is 26. I think this is the second day of my camping at the Heaton Bay, Frisco. I think it is very nice. So I decided the whole day today to read books. I'm not a fast reader, and reading this Dubliners, and I finished I finished like 8 short stories in here, and probably 1/3 of it, and I'd like to talk about a little bit the 8th story called A Little Cloud. A Little Cloud is about 2 old-time friends who grew up and went to school together, and one is probably the narrator of this short story, and he describes his friend 8 years ago. They are students or whatever, and his friend went to London and became a successful newspaper editor, and he himself is staying in Dublin, and not being able to be I would say successful. He wants to be successful, but circumstances and so forth didn't allow him to be thinking of him as a successful person. And so 8 years later they met, and this old friend came to visit Dublin, and so they met, and they talked, and so he asked about what kind of a life do you have, and you went to Paris and London, what it's like to be living there and so forth. And so the friends it's 6 for one and half dozen for the others, or something like that. So he felt like inferior to this friend, and he kind of thinking of his life as remaining in Dublin and so forth. But one thing he's kind of happy about is that he got married and have a child, and his friend is still single, and so they talked about that. So his friend said, sometimes I will find my wife also, and so forth. So in that regard, he felt a little bit maybe happy about that. But anyway, so he invited him to come to his house to see his family. But the friends had a prior engagement, and couldn't accept that particular invitation. And he felt a little bit bitter about that. And then the meeting ended, and he left. And so he came back to his house and taking care of his kids, and this baby was crying or whatever. So he got so frustrated and shouted very, very hard. The baby start to get stunned and start to cry a little bit, and so his wife flashed back to the room and said, what happened, and whatever, and so the kids were crying, and and he tried to explain what happened, but at the end of the story, he felt remorse of screaming at his kids. And this is the story of this particular little cloud. And this particular story is kind of a small story, of course, not a short story, as small, but as you see, they haven't met 8 years, and they meet because they are very good close friends there at the time. And so, of course, the one is more successful than the others, and he feels a little bit feel disappointed in his life and everything, and especially getting out of Dublin, the town of Dublin, and try to see the Paris and London and so forth. And he dreamed about it, and so his friends was telling him, how fantastic the Paris is, and so forth. And so in that regard, I would say this particular story is something that very universal, I would say, and especially the friends you used to be. After all these years, you haven't seen them for 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, or 40 years, and wonder how they're doing. And you feel like you didn't go out from the town you grew up with, and especially comparing with the people who left the town and experienced a lot of overseas traveling and all these things, and so you compare the life of them and yours, and you kind of feel kind of frustrated, and so it is very, very common, I think, common theme. I would say in many, many instances, I think many people cannot leave from the place you grew up with because of your families is there, and your life has been established there, and you cannot get out. But some people get out and do a little bit more wider experience. And but in this particular story in James Joyce, it is about not being able to get out, and this is a very similar theme of the Evelyn that I talked to about a while ago, and Evelyn is also grew up in Dublin, and she wants to get out from the city and experience the whole new world outside, and she's trying to get married with this guy, sailor, who trying to go into Argentina, Buenos Aires. And so she prepared for leaving and get the tickets and everything, but at the end she couldn't follow this sailor at the harbor, and so that didn't happen. The escaping didn't happen. And here the guy stayed in Dublin and got married, and happily married, I would say, and life is established there. Happy life, I would say, but at the same time, he wondered what if he could get out from that particular place, and there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make, maybe, but at least you can be more. You have more opportunity to be successful, and you have more, life gets wider because you see different things in the different world, and so maybe life is richer. But I think those dichotomy is again written in this particular short story, and that I would say this author's attitude is in about Dublin, right? He's an Irish person who was born in Dublin, and he always felt that he wanted to get out from Dublin, and but he also had a tremendous affection for this place, and so I think that's two emotional aspects of it. I think he wants to convey, I think, you have this birthplace where everything is, in your blood, and you grew up in a place where, all friends, families, everybody's there. So it's getting out of it. It's so lonely and also more difficult for some people because they live with this human relationship. I think that's one of the reasons that people feel happy about. And but the other kind of people is like to just end the human relationship and move on from there and to see the world or whatever. And in that type of life, I think he may see the wider world and experience more. However, questionable that he's genuinely happy about that because he didn't have a chance to get married, have a family, or he didn't. I don't know. He didn't have this close knit of family or friend around you, and so he feels a little bit lonely, maybe. And so it's like a dichotomy of those two lives, and it is interesting to see. I think James Joyce's attitude is probably because of this Dubliner is about memoir of people in Dublin, and so he tend to write about people who are in Dublin, staying in Dublin, compared to the people who get out, and always the side of the people who stays in Dublin, and so that's kind of interesting, and overall I think it's just a life. People have different life, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be, both of them could be existing. And but in the very back of this is that I think is there's a wider place that you can visit, you can see, or you can live than the small town of Dublin. I think that's what James Joyce is trying to say. And although you have a tremendous affection of the town you grew up with. But I think you have to leave there sometimes to experience the wider world. So that's my takes on it, and some people get a different feeling. But most of the story, this is the eighth story, called Little Crowd. But most of the story so far is that people who are staying there and having a little story of trying to meet the girls and all these things there in the town, and so those small lifestyle, I think he affectionately described it, but at the same time I think he wishes that people get a little bit more wider, have more wider experience than just one town that you grew up with. So that's my takes. Could be wrong. Okay.